This video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thanks for letting me do this for so long. How much do you think you know about Pokemon? That's not a rhetorical question, and this isn't some kind of low-effort BuzzFeed article that purports to reveal hidden Pokemon secrets that you didn't know, and then reveals that Pikachu is in fact yellow! Now, this is something far more unsettling. Pokemon may have the facade of a cutesy series of games aimed at children where you collect hundreds of adorable friend-shaped critters to go on adventures with, but just below the surface are their true intentions. Pokemon can be damn scary, and it's actually so widespread that I want to stay away from strictly Pokédex entries since words are cheap, and I want to see some horrifying action. It's that time of year again, might as well lean into it. So I want to exclude ghost-type Pokemon from this video because they're designed to be scary, and I want a bit more of a challenge, and hey, removing ghost-type Pokemon from the equation still leaves us with over 850 Pokemon to choose from, and I don't need to tell you how little that narrows things down. I have nearly 9 generations of Pokemon to play with, and perhaps we can work out if there's a pattern here. Do Pokemon become more disturbing as Game Freak are forced to think of a design and a backstory to Pokemon number 729? Who even is that? Surprisingly, you can find a hefty number of disturbing Pokemon right at the very start in Gen 1, when most Pokemon were either very closely related to real-world counterparts or designed on autopilot, in a way that only serves to make Cubone and Marowak all the more jarring, since the majority of Gen 1 is very simplistic and tame, so that it doesn't alienate anyone with this new franchise, and then you get to Lavender Town and... oh no. This is the distinction I wanted to make between Pokemon that scare me and Pokemon that someone had fun writing the Pokédex entry for, because while something like Gorbis is known for draining the bodily fluids from their prey, this isn't represented in the games at all beyond a few lines of text in the Pokédex. Cubone and Marowak, though, are baked into the games a bit more organically, and they don't do too much to hide just how messed up these Pokemon are. I'm sure we all know this by now, but Cubone wears the skull of its dead mother on its head, which is both very morbid and strangely, like, consistent, I guess? Every Cubone looks like this, which means that every Cubone mother has to die, and every Cubone responds to this trauma in the same twisted way. The Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town gives you a slice of this fucked up life cycle, since the upper floors are blocked by a mysterious ghost, which the Sylph Scope reveals to be the vengeful spirit of a Marowak, the mother of a Cubone who was killed by Team Rocket. Incidentally, Marowaks are basically Cubones, except their mother's skull has now become permanently fused to their head, which, again, the fact that this happens to every Marowak is some disturbing inevitability that doesn't sit well with me. It's lower down on this list because there's a tinge of sadness with it, but overall, the concept of every single Cubone going through some shit is frankly a little terrifying. Poor guy can't catch a break. The very concept of legendary Pokemon is a little scary. You're taking the idea of Pokemon being these relatable equivalents of real-world wildlife and expanding that so much that you end up with gigantic monsters with ties to mythology and creation stories, and whichever way you want to swing that, these are frighteningly powerful Pokemon. If I was living in the world of Pokemon, I don't think I could sleep particularly soundly if I knew that there were so many giant creatures that could ruin my life in the blink of an eye. And yet, sometimes it's the smaller legendaries that have all the darkest traits, and for a while, it seemed like every new thing they added onto Kyurem only made it scarier. Originally, it was this underwhelming third legendary in Black and White, not quite as good as either of Zekrom or Reshiram with underwhelming stat distribution, and a type combination that just doesn't work at all well. Come the Gen 5 sequels, and Kyurem was put front and center, with Game Freak deciding that the awkward middle child of the Tau trio should be forcibly combined with the other two dragons. The DNA splicing antics of Black 2 and White 2 are already pretty disturbing the longer you think about them. If Game Freak ever fancy making Pokemon Legends, Tau, maybe? We'll find out that Reshiram and Zekrom were once the same Pokemon, but split apart at some point to take the forms we know today. The splicers bolt Kyurem onto either dragon for some reason to create a stronger, uglier version of Kyurem that can use Zekrom's or Reshiram's power for itself. The playing God aspect of Black and White Kyurem is incredibly wrong, and a direction that I never expected Pokemon to go in, but things only get worse when Dad of the Year Getsis gets a hold of Kyurem late in Black and White 2's story. Maybe it speaks more for Getsis' mentality, but the fact that he orders Kyurem to attack the player and would have succeeded in freezing the protagonist, possibly to death, if it wasn't for N intervening. But for me, this says a lot about the dangers of legendary Pokemon and how easily they can kill you. Not to mention that Getsis and Kyurem managed to plunge the whole of Unova into some frigid, wintry hell, and that kind of power is, yeah, that's not okay. Someone ought to put these legendaries in check. Since we can't talk about Ghost-type Pokemon, do you know what the next best thing is? Dark-type Pokemon were put on this Earth in Gen 2 to counter the dominant force that was the Psychic type, with the added upside of being the designated evil type in the Pokemon world. If you've got a concept for a Pokemon that has even the faintest hint of malice or mischief, then you can slap the Dark type onto it and fully commit to your Fire Dog being a hound from hell, or your Cthulhu Squid being this nefarious monster that hypnotizes its prey to do its bidding. So yeah, Dark types are a little messed up and usually capable of doing terrible things, but for my money, the Pokemon that tries the least to hide it is probably Darkrai. I mean, Dark literally takes up most of his name, so they aren't hiding it all that well at all. Well, maybe not, since his movie paints him out to be more of a sympathetic, misunderstood character who invades the dreams of its victims and torments them with unending nightmares as a means of a defense mechanism, but I reckon that just makes it worse and scarier. Darkrai is seen as the more dangerous counterpart to Cresselia, this elegant psychic-type lunar deity who can dispel nightmares and bring happy dreams. And the difference between this duo and a lot of other legendary twosomes in Pokemon is that we actually see this happen a few times in-game. Sailor Eldritch's son, great name bro, is bedridden in a house in Canalave City and can be heard muttering something about Darkrai haunting his dreams, leading to Daddy Eldritch asking the player to help his son, which can only be done by tracking down Cresselia and healing the son of a Lunar Wing. Away from mainline games, Darkrai is the main antagonist of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time and Darkness, where he's just a straight-up villain with incredible power and a desire to fuck up the world wherever possible. Again, I know the movie tries very hard to make Darkrai sympathetic, but he's in a lot of games doing terrible things that suggest the opposite. Hey, even if it is a defense mechanism, that's not as encouraging as you might think. If I casually tortured people whenever I was scared, not many people would want to be around me. I don't think that's too controversial an opinion. Let's be real, Pokemon is a little obsessed with dreams. I'm sure they come up frequently in Japanese mythology or culture, but just the sheer number of Pokemon that can use the move Hypnosis should key you in that weaponized hypnotism is surprisingly prevalent in this world. Darkrai can learn Hypnosis, which only makes his signature ability and move that cause sleeping Pokemon to take damage even more useful, but how about a Pokemon that is a little more organically designed around Hypnosis? When Hypno was added to the first generation of Pokemon, I think the aim was to have it be a stereotypical portrayal of hypnotists, right down to the pendulum being used to hypnotize people. The issue is how this progressed from here, because you don't tend to hypnotize someone without some kind of motive in doing so, and unlike, say, Malamar, who also does this to innocent humans, Hypno has done this in an officially released Pokemon game. The Sevi Island side quest thing is kind of superfluous to your forward momentum in the Gen 1 remakes, but it does provide a moment that rivals finding a Marowak ghost in the Pokemon Tower for creepiness. 3 Island has a lot going on and it can be easy to get distracted, but the main reason you're here is to rescue this young girl called Lostel, who had wandered off from her dad and into the Berry Forest. This is a forest that children are advised not to go into because there's loads of Hypno in here that like to hypnotize little children and lead them away from safety. Sure enough, you find Lostel absolutely terrified of something, and you need to defeat her kidnapper Hypno before she'll come with you. This is what you need to do with Pokedex entries, because there's a line in one of Hypno's that mentions that it kidnaps children sometimes, but it is so much more effective seeing it happen for yourself. Yeah, Hypno is fucking terrifying. You are not forgetting that in a hurry. There's something altogether more sinister about the 7th generation of Pokemon. Not my favourite by any means, since the first few hours are slow as hell, and some of the character work is annoyingly inconsistent, but for a collection of games that took Pokemon into space, with wormholes and other dimensions, it stuck the landing with just how intimidating this all is. The Ultra Beasts are given these bizarre, sometimes abstract designs that are close to being something recognisable, but ultimately they get lost in some horrifying mix of the familiar and not being able to work out where the face is on it. Nihilego set the standard for weird Ultra Beast design, but this was blown out of the water and halfway to the moon by Guzzlord. All the other Ultra Beasts are happy to be these strange aliens that don't fit in with normal Pokemon, but Guzzlord's design and, yeah, his name speak to something a bit simpler. The Pokédex is actually helpful here, since the line about Guzzlord not producing any droppings after eating tells you that it's the black hole Pokemon that consumes absolutely everything in its path. Possibly not that scary if you keep it on the sidelines and don't elaborate further, but sure enough, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon found a way of demonstrating clear as day just how horrifying a monster that has a black hole in its mouth is in practice. One of the benefits of Ultra Space is that you can have some pretty out there locations in there, which is usually where you go to find and catch some of the Ultra Beasts, but there exists a special wormhole thousands of light years from Alola that leads you to somewhere far more terrifying. At first, it's not immediately obvious what the Ultra Ruin is, but the presence of a man in a suit sets it out as something vastly different to other Ultra Spaces that had no people in them whatsoever. The main area has a Guzzlord going to town at the far end, and again, it's not super obvious what's happening, but you can slowly piece together from your surroundings that Ultra Ruin is in fact an alternate timeline version of Hau'oli City that has been absolutely devastated by Guzzlord, and you're actually walking up a toppled building as some distorted version of Hau'oli's theme mournfully trickles away in the background. Pokemon so rarely shows destruction on a scale like this. You know, when Hoenn was drowning or cooking, it never went further than some quirky weather effects. Seeing the aftermath of an Ultra Beast utterly annihilating civilization like this is every fear you could have with powerful Pokemon using their power for evil. Yes, a Pokemon that eats and never gets full could theoretically eat a planet to the point of mass evacuation. Didn't expect Pokemon to go this hard though. So yeah, those were my picks for the scariest non-ghost type Pokemon. Do you agree? Or have I missed something out? Let me know in a comment down below, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe for more in the future, and hit that bell for notifications of every new upload. I also want to thank my top supporters on Patreon like Raina Bana Bobana, Christopher Robinson, and Blue Catarade. Thank you for watching, and happy Halloween everyone.